Real Pros, coming next on the Bassmasters, right here on TNN Outdoors.
It's not a very big fish, Bo. He's just barely hooked, though. I'm just trying to get another hook into him. Help the cause, anyways.
The Bassmaster Tournament Trail moves up the Roanoke River today to Bugs Island Lake for the Bassmaster Virginia Eastern Division Invitational. Last week, the pros had a tough time downriver at Lake Gaston. But above the John H. Kerr Dam, the fishing picture on Bugs Island's 50,000 acres takes on a different focus.
For one thing, this is a flood control reservoir, and the Corps of Engineers pulls the water level down in mid-October. Come here in the spring, it's an entirely different fishery. You fish the shoreline cover then. But right now, there's one key to success. Find the bait, find the bass. Here's Bassmaster Pro Sam Sweat of Covington, Louisiana, to explain this strategy.
Basically what we're doing, the fish are scattered out right now. The shad are moving and starting to move back into the cove. Water temperatures coming off the summertime pattern going into the fall is starting to cool down. And the bait fish are starting to move to the back of the coves. Naturally, the largemouth are going to fall in right behind it. So basically what I'm trying to do is just look for the shad starting to surface and looking for some holding areas where the bass can literally ambush the shad as they pass through.
With the lake level dropping and the water temperature cooling off, bass predictably do one other thing. They suspend. That can be good or it can be bad. Jigging spoons are taking a few small limits, but the best bet seems to be the backs of the creeks.
Today on the Bassmasters, you're going to get a short course in how to pattern a bass migration and learn firsthand how Kevin VanDam, a two-time Bass Angler of the Year, works a creek channel. What he does to be successful when others fishing the same waters fail. Also, our Bassmasters camera crews will be alongside as two-time world champion George Cochran explains what he's doing with a crankbait to trigger bass to bite.
So Bassmasters, trust us. The next half hour is going to be jam full of bass and know-how. And you'll meet Charlie Hartley, an Ohio-based pro, who's out here chasing his dream, trying to make a living bass fishing.
There's one. That was a really nice fish, and I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen.
Sorry, Charlie. That's bass fishing. But in this Virginia Invitational, there's a big payday on the line. $40,000 first prize. Hang in there, Charlie.
That was a dandy, wasn't it? You see the boil she left that? No. I had her stuck.
Reservoir, one of the best unspoiled bass fisheries on the East Coast. 50,000 acres shared by Virginia and North Carolina. Over 800 miles of shoreline, most of it relatively undeveloped. It's the location for the $205,000 Bassmaster Virginia Eastern Invitational, a qualifying tournament for the Bassmasters Classic World Championship in August. The main Roanoke River tributary slices through the red clay countryside with numerous coves and creeks, names like Grassy, Butchers, Aaron, and the Clearwater arm Nutbush Creek near the dam. But it's the stained, off-color tributaries in the upper reaches of Bugs Island Lake where many of the 330 tournament anglers are putting their hopes for fame and fortune. Kevin VanDam of Michigan, already a winner on this season's Bassmaster Trail, capturing the Kmart Maryland Top 100 on the Potomac River. And yesterday at the Day 1 weigh-in here on Bugs Island, Kevin charged out front. His 5 bass tournament limit and 15 pounds, a 3-pound average, is certainly an impressive start. Only 17 limits are scored. Ohio's Ollie Alexander with 14 pounds 3 ounces is second. Rodney Sorrell of North Carolina, George Cochran of Arkansas, and Missouri's Charley Campbell round out yesterday's top 5.
This Bassmaster Invitational format differs from the top 100 Pro-Am events, where the pro has control of the boat and the amateur fishes in the back of the boat. Here, the partners are paired together and competing against each other. Mike Iaconelli, in 22nd place, is fishing up front alongside Kevin VanDam, the tournament leader.
Well, back in this creek, I'm really fishing two patterns. I'm fishing a lot of these steeper rocky banks like this, and because that's where the fish are kind of using to migrate in and out of these creeks. And you know, the water's 7, 8, 10 foot deep out in front of it, and most of the bites are coming 4, 5, 6 foot down on it. They're not moving real shallow on it. And then the other thing is up in the day when the shad start getting more active, the fish start roaming to the other side, to the flat side of these creeks and pockets, and catching them on little rounding points or any little stumps or any little piece of cover that's in the water. And it's a lot easier early in the day when they're on this stuff right here, because you know right where to put your bait. But later on, you just have to cover a lot of water and hope for a few strikes. There's a brush pile there. No, he's just a little one. Just a little one. We take them all at this point. As it gets up in the day a little bit, and usually the sunshine makes it a lot better, but these fish start moving back in these flat pockets to follow the shad. And any little piece of cover, if you can find any stumps or submerged brush piles and stuff. And this little bay right here is lined with little brush piles that some crappie fishermen probably put out, but they're just in about 2 and 3 foot of water, and that's what that fish was hanging on, is right on one of those. I think if we could get the sun to pop out, we'd probably do a little better, but that's not what the forecast is calling for. It's a real flat pocket off to the side of the creek channel, and the shad's starting to move in there, and especially with the wind blowing in it today. I've seen several nice bass chasing shad out in the middle of it, but I already had my limit, so I didn't even go after them. I was kind of saving them for today, and I just caught one just off these gravel banks, and that's what the bass do a lot on days like today, is they're just going to roam in these flat pockets, and they feel safe in here because the water's nice and stained, so they'll just swim around looking for the shad, and a little rattle trap or a little bitty crankbait or something like that will catch them, sometimes a little spinnerbait.
Next, we'll catch up to one of the tournament trail's best stump jumpers, 2-time classic champion George Cochran, and learn his trick to trigger strikes with a crankbait. But now it's time for Bass Mail, where you Bassmasters viewers ask the pros for answers. Mary Kessner of Cedar Hill, Missouri writes, would you give some tips on walking the dog with a Zara spook? Also, what's the best line to use in clear water? Here's topwater expert Charley Campbell with the answer.
Well, Mary, you're talking about my favorite way to fish, and that's topwater with a Zara spook and with a woodwalker. One thing that I like to do, I use a limber pole. I've got a pole here. It's got graphite up about half the way, and then it's got glass the rest of the way, so it's real limber and flexible on the end from here on up. And that way it makes the plug walk real well. And then the size line I use a 14-pound test line most of the time, a green line so it doesn't show up in the water for the fish. And that way I find that the plug works much better. And also on the plug, I use a snap or a split ring on the front of it, and that way it lets the plug wobble back and forth like that real well. And here I've got a woodwalker, which is just like a Zara spook. And I drilled a little hole in it, and I put a rattle in there and glued it in, so it really rattles good, and that seems to bring up the fish real well. Now let me show you kind of how I work it. You throw it out past the object that you want to fish, and then you give little short jerks. Now you don't want to reel too fast. Just kind of, in fact, I don't hardly reel at all. Just kind of go back and forth like this. Just little short jerks with your wrist. Now watch my wrist right there. And little short jerks with your wrist, and I'm just barely reeling it every now and then like that. And that way you just jerk it back and forth, and then you come by the object that you want to fish. And then if you want to half step it to walk, make it go to one side or the other, you jerk it in between jerks. And that way you can make it go to the right or left, walk it over next to a stump or log, and that way you can catch a really big bass. And remember, one thing, when you get a strike of a big bass, don't set the hook until you feel that fish on the end of your line.
If you have a question for the Bassmasters pros, write Bass Mail, 8600 Coppertown Lane, Box 404, Dallas, Texas, 75243. We may select your question to answer on the air.